I'm Dr. Whitney Cox. I'm the lecturer in world religions in the Philosophy and World Religions department here at Rowan. My area of expertise is contemporary U.S. Christianity, gender, sexuality, and AIDS. Easter is the Christian celebration of the resurrection of Jesus. In the New Testament, the part of the Bible written in Greek by Christians, there are 4 stories of Jesus' life called the Gospels, and all 4 stories contain, at the end, stories where Jesus is crucified, he dies, he gets buried, and then on Sunday morning, his followers, mostly women, come and find, instead of his body ready to be prepared for a more formal burial, that the tomb is empty and that Jesus has been resurrected and is alive again and is going around and doing more things. Neat trick. And Easter becomes, about 100 years after this actual event, a general celebration among Christians of the resurrection of Jesus. Easter is, interestingly enough, what is called a movable feast, which means that it's not on the same calendar day every year. It gets determined by being the first Sunday after the first full moon, after the vernal equinox, sort of because you actually calculate this differently if you're a Western Christian or an Eastern Christian. Eastern Christians go by the Julian calendar, and therefore Eastern Easter can be anywhere from the start of April to the start of May. Western Christians use the Gregorian calendar, which means that Easter can be anywhere from the end of March to the end of April. Sometimes they align, sometimes they're off. This particular year, they are not synchronous. But Easter is always on a Sunday and is celebrated following something called Holy Week, the celebration from Palm Sunday, which is the previous Sunday, on towards Easter. During Holy Week, there are very often specific services, masses, prayers done. Sometimes there are pageants. Very often there are things called passion plays, which are theatrical reenactments of Jesus' last week and death. These lead up to the Easter morning celebration, which tends to be, among Christians, a pretty big blowout. It's the Sunday of the year when, if you've got something, you're going to do it that day. You find lots of kids folded into Easter celebrations. You didn't always, though. Earliest Easter celebrations were still joyful. It is always a happy festival. You are not supposed to be somber on Easter, and in fact, a lot of early Christians who practiced fasting and who had a lot of monks and nuns who had lots of self-denial routines actually were forbidden from fasting on Easter because it was supposed to be a celebration and a happy day. Some of the earliest centuries of Christianity, on Sunday morning, that would be the time when new Christians were admitted to the church. They would have spent a year-plus long process of learning about Christianity, being vetted by the bishop, going through various classes essentially, and proving that they really did want to become Christians. They would have had a long series of that Thursday before Easter, Maundy Thursday, to Easter morning, vigils and prayers and fasts and a midnight baptism, in fact, from Saturday rolling over into Sunday. Sunday morning at that sunrise service, they would be introduced to the whole community. That changes as Christianity becomes a little less something you join as an adult and a lot more generational. There become fairly quickly fewer Christians who grow up and then join Christianity, and more Christians who are Christians because their parents were Christians. And so the celebration shifts a little more towards a more joyous feast and not specifically a baptismal feast. That becomes, you can do that any part of the year, mostly. In the modern world, how you celebrate Easter depends on a lot of different things, and two of them tend to be what kind of Christian you are and where you are geographically. Christianity is variable. It's really flexible. It tends to incorporate local traditions, local flavors, local languages, and to develop sort of its own thing in a lot of ways. So that Easter in, for instance, the Philippines among Catholics is going to be radically different from Easter in Germany among the Lutherans. Same festival, same religion, but radically different traditions and things that people have done for centuries and centuries. In the United States, what you're going to find people mostly doing are the big Sunday morning services, usually sunrise services. Those tend to be very popular. There's a lot of emphasis sometimes placed on having new Easter outfits and lots of flowers, looking particularly good and putting special effort into this day because it's such a big celebration. There tend to be two different kinds of Easter celebrations. There tend to be the really religious kind, and there tend to be the secular kind. And it's not like you have to choose one or the other. A lot of religious Christians will go to church on Sunday morning and celebrate Jesus, and then we'll have a much more secular family celebration, which usually involves a meal and fun things for the kids to do. It's very much a family gathering sort of thing. And there are lots of people in the United States who celebrate Easter in that secular way who aren't Christians or who aren't actively religiously Christian. Sometimes this is because they were raised in a Christian household and this was part of their tradition that they had growing up, so that even if they don't go to church anymore, they've still got this in their minds as this is an important celebration. This is when my family gets together. This is what we do. And this is how you pass on these traditions to your children. Secular traditions tend to involve the Easter baskets, usually filled with lots of chocolate, hopefully filled with lots of chocolate if your parents have been nice to you this year. Colored eggs. Egg dyeing is actually a very old Christian tradition. It started out with Eastern Christian traditions about eggs miraculously turning red. This continued on so that in a lot of Eastern Christian traditions, dyeing eggs red is still the way that it happens. There are, of course, lots of extra decorations now, and tend to, in the United States, you can just go and buy a dye kit and have lots of fun no matter what color you're going for. The Easter Bunny also tends to be an important figure. And this is a very non-biblical figure. In fact, this is a part of a German tradition that has become picked up by the United States, in part because German Christianity was so influential on United States Christianity and colonial Christianity. For the most part, what you're going to find with, especially with the more secular Easter traditions, but the religious ones as well, is a lot of springtime symbolism, because Easter is a springtime festival. There are a lot of people who will make the argument that it is somehow stolen from pagan festivals. There's a lot of discussion about the idea that the word Easter may come from the name of a Germanic goddess. It may. It also may come from a couple other things. There's actually a lot of controversy about where the word Easter comes from and comes into the language. But Easter is, in the same vein like Passover, a spring celebration and a rebirth celebration. And so you will find across these spring celebrations, pretty much no matter what religion it is, flowers and eggs and lambs and other baby animals as a sign of rebirth and renewal and hooray, we survived the winter. Now we get to feast and enjoy the sunshine. Easter is celebrated by most Christians, but not all Christians celebrate Easter. All Christians will mark Easter as a notable date. They will all celebrate the resurrection of Jesus, but the specific Easter feast, that's not actually universal among Christians. There are Christians such as the Quakers who refuse to celebrate Easter because they don't want to suggest that you should be more Christian on one day than you should be on any other day. There are Christians like Jehovah's Witnesses who reject Easter because they see it as having too strong pagan connections. One of the reasons that so many non-Christian Americans, or just tangentially Christian Americans, tend to celebrate Easter is very much the same reason that tangentially Christian Americans tend to celebrate Christmas. These two major Christian celebrations were such a part of American life as the United States is being founded and its culture is becoming a thing. And the United States has such a Christian underpinning culturally of everything that, yeah, Easter and Christmas are the two big Christian holidays on the calendar. And so they become two of the big holidays that everything in the United States starts to revolve around, whether or not you're actually celebrating them. Combine that with growing commercialism and capitalism wanting more consumption of things. Well, obviously Christmas is a gift-giving holiday, so you've got lots of purchasing gifts and things like that. Easter is a little less about gift giving, but there are still opportunities like the Easter baskets, like lots of candy, lots and lots of candy, fancy eggs, cute stuffed animals, things like that, that are available and are available in stores in a way that's not coded especially religious. You don't have to be any particular religion to see a little stuffed animal or a little cream-filled chocolate egg and go, hey, that's cool, I want in on that. The traditional Easter greeting, in fact, religiously speaking, is for one individual to say, Christ is risen, and the other individual to say, Christ is risen indeed. No matter what language it is that you're working in, this is just the back and forth exchange that tends to happen on Easter morning. The other thing about Easter is that Easter is preceded by a 40-day period called Lent that starts on Ash Wednesday. And for that liturgical period in the church, you are not supposed to say hallelujah. That is taken out of the music, it's taken out of the various parts of the liturgy, and Easter morning is the time that it gets put back in, and that's why there's all the hallelujahs to it. That's why the Handel's Hallelujah Chorus from the Messiah is not a Christmas thing. It is an Easter song specifically, and the reason there are so many hallelujahs is, well, you're backed up, you haven't been able to say it for 40 days, it's Easter morning, go for it.